ഇന്ത്യയിലെ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഫോർമേഷനെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് നമുക്ക് പൊതുവായ ധാരണയുണ്ട്. ബ്രിട്ടീഷ് കൊളോണിയൽ പീരീഡ് മുതൽ കൊളോണിയൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് എന്ന സുവ്യക്തമായ ഘടന അതിന് കൈവരുന്നുണ്ട്. 1947 മുതൽ 91 വരെയുള്ള ഒരു കാലത്തെ നമുക്ക് ഒരു സോഷ്യലിസ്റ്റ് ലിബറൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് എന്ന് വേണമെങ്കിൽ പറയാം. മിക്സഡ് ഇക്കണോമി അതിൻ്റെ അടിസ്ഥാന ധാരയായിട്ട് വർത്തിക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുകയുണ്ടായി. അത് ഒരു സോഷ്യലിസ്റ്റ് ഘടനാരൂപം, സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ക്യാപിറ്റലിസം എന്ന നിലയ്ക്ക് സോഷ്യലിസ്റ്റ് ഘടനാരൂപവും വെൽഫെയർ സ്റ്റേറ്റിൻ്റെ ഘടനയും ചേർത്തിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സവിശേഷമായ രാഷ്ട്രം എന്ന് വേണമെങ്കിൽ പറയാം. മിക്സഡ് ഇക്കണോമി എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുമെങ്കിലും അതൊരു യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമല്ല എന്ന് നിങ്ങൾക്കറിയാം. അത് സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ക്യാപിറ്റലിസം ആയിരുന്നു. 91 ലിബറലിസത്തിന് ശേഷം നമ്മൾ കൊളോണിയൽ, നവകൊളോണിയൽ എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്ന പോലെ ലിബറൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റിൽ നിന്ന് നവലിബറൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റിലേക്കുള്ള ഒരു പ്രയാണം ആരംഭിച്ചു. അപ്പോൾ ഇവോൾവിങ് നിയോലിബറൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് എന്നാണ് അതിൻ്റെ ടൈറ്റിൽ സെബാസ്റ്റ്യൻ മാഷ് പറഞ്ഞത്. പിന്നീട് അദ്ദേഹം തന്നെ പറയുകയുണ്ടായി, ഇവോൾവിങ് എന്നുള്ളതല്ല, ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് ഓൾറെഡി ഇവോൾവ്. ഒരു നവലിബറൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റായി ഭാരതം മാറിക്കഴിഞ്ഞിരിക്കുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു നവലിബറൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റായി മാറിയിട്ടുള്ള ഭാരതത്തിൻ്റെ ചരിത്ര വഴികളെ അടയാളപ്പെടുത്തുകയും അതിൻ്റെ ബന്ധങ്ങളെ വിശകലനം ചെയ്യുകയും ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു സെഷനാണിവിടെ. പ്രൊഫസർ എൻ സെബാസ്റ്റ്യൻ, അദ്ദേഹം ജവഹർലാൽ നെഹ്റു യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിൽ നിന്നാണ് PhD എടുത്തത്. വയനാട്ടുകാരനാണ്. സിക്കിം സെൻട്രൽ യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിൽ അസോസിയേറ്റ് പ്രൊഫസറായിരുന്നു. അതിനിടയ്ക്ക് ഒരു വർഷക്കാലം കോഴിക്കോട് സർവകലാശാല പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ സയൻസ് വിഭാഗത്തിൽ പ്രൊഫസറായി ഡെപ്യൂട്ടേഷൻ അടിസ്ഥാനത്തിൽ സേവനമനുഷ്ഠിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി. ഞങ്ങൾ ഒരുമിച്ച് ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെൻറ്റ് ഓഫ് വെസ്റ്റ് ഏഷ്യൻ സ്റ്റഡീസിലെ കോൺട്രാക്ട് ലെക്ചറായിട്ട് വടകരയിൽ പ്രവർത്തിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി. ഇപ്പോൾ ജാമിയ മിലിയ ഇസ്ലാമിയയിലെ സെൻറ്റർ ഫോർ വെസ്റ്റ് ഏഷ്യൻ സ്റ്റഡീസിലെ പ്രൊഫസറാണ്. അദ്ദേഹത്തെ ഈ വിഷയം അവതരിപ്പിക്കുന്നതിനും അതിനുശേഷമുള്ള സംവാദത്തിനുമായി സ്നേഹാദരപൂർവ്വം ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നു.
Very good evening, one and all. Respected Chair and my dear friend Professor P.J Vincent, Professor Srijit, dear colleagues from Department of History and other departments, other teaching departments of the college. First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizers, the principal of this college, Professor Priya, the organizing committee members, and my special thanks to the Department of History who has hosted me for this program. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be part of this great event. I'm sure this event is going to make a difference in our approach, attitudes, understandings, views in different ways. I'm not saying that it's going to affect everyone in the same way, but it will affect, somehow it will impact in your life. All my best wishes for this program, and thanks for inviting me. So the subject that we have chosen for this evening session is the neoliberal transformation of Indian state. Here our focus is on Indian state, but as we all know, the neoliberal transformation is something which is not restricted to Indian state only. At least this is applicable for almost all post-colonial states in the global south. Starts from Africa, Latin America or South America, Middle East, Southeast Asia, South Asia, the non-Western world. Therefore, the majority of the people in the world are somehow affected by the neoliberal transformation. Another important point that I would like to mention in the very beginning of this session is, the way neoliberalism has spread across the world, particularly the global south or developing world, has certain common features in terms of where does it come, who directs this, how does it affect the politics, economy and society of the global south. So why similarly the neoliberalism is very much important for each and every one of us. We knowingly or unknowingly, we are all part of that process. We are all affected by that process. This is because, a type of neoliberal rationality has already been established. It has become what I say, the common sense knowledge. It has become the hegemonic dominant knowledge that shape our thoughts, that shapes our views, that shapes our deeds, words, actions, everything. We may not be knowing that, but it's a reality because, as I said, it has become the hegemonic knowledge that rule our time. And we are all somehow connected to that, affected by that neoliberal process. When raised the question of neoliberal transformation of Indian state, I would like to give a brief background of this process. Since we have limited time, it's not possible to trace the historical trajectories through which neoliberal transformation had taken place, but some of the critical movements of this process needs to be mentioned. This one argument, possibly, the neoliberalism or neoliberal process has started in 1946-47 period. Those who believe that the neoliberalism started during that time because of, they talk about the establishment of certain international economic institutions which we consider as the major, drivers or driving forces of neoliberalism of our time. This is, we all know. It has been discussed thoroughly in the political sphere of Kerala. That is World Bank, IMF, World Trade Organization. There is one debate. It starts from there. But I feel a much more convincing argument is connected to what we call Thatcherism and Reaganism, late 1970s. So there was a crisis in the Western world, particularly in a crisis affected multinational companies and transnational corporations, where the profitability of mass production had gone significantly down during 1970s and 80s, late 70s and 80s. That time, what happened, we all know the type of Keynesianism, welfareism was getting popular among states, not only in the Western world, also in other parts of the world. So the global capitalist system, or say the capitalist forces, had clearly identified a major threat. The welfareism, Keynesianism is going to be a major impact. It has a major impact on the profit that you make out of mass production. So that is the time they realize, unlike the classical liberal understanding where state needs to be kept out from economic process. Whereas, they realize the importance of taking state also along with in the process of expansion of capitalism. So this is what exactly happened as part of Thatcherism and Reaganism, a type of seemingly conservative but more pro-market regulations have been brought with an intention to expand the possibilities of profit making through capitalist mode of production. So this is what actually happened, and this was definitely catering the interest of the economic oligarchy, or one can say the global capitalist forces. So this is what happened in 1978 and late 70s and 80s roughly. And this wave of neoliberalism, what makes neoliberalism distinct is, as I said, so that redefined the role of state actually. The state happened to be an outsider in the economy according to classical liberal understanding. Now they realize, in fact in late 1940s itself, scholars like Karl Polanyi had pointed out this, because he has very specifically said market, politics and economics is embedded in politics. The great transformation, he has explained this in detail. Economics is embedded in politics, so the whole idea of free market is absurd, because market cannot function as an autonomous institution. It needs the intervention, whether positive or negative, intervention of state, institutional support of state, institutional engagements of state to direct market. Otherwise, the idea of autonomous market or free market or market as a self-regulating institution is absurd, in fact. This is what he pointed out. He has used the term embedded. It is economics is embedded in politics. So there itself, these discussions had already started in 1950s itself, but by 1970s, even the liberal capitalist groups also admit the reality that state has a role to play. But that role was not like, the socialist system or the idea of mixed economy envisions, where, state is the major player. State play the role of a regulator. State monitor economic activities, and intervention of state in economic activities was a necessity according to them at that point of time. This is what is reversed by the proponents of neoliberalism, where they argued for state intervention. It's not non-intervention of state. State intervention is required. But what kind of intervention that state has to do in economic activities? State has to play the role of a facilitator. This is what exactly happening in neoliberalism. It redefines the role of various institutions and actors, including state, in economy. Now, it talks about the intervention of state, but State must intervene, state should intervene for the interest of market. This is the simplest way I can explain the difference between liberalism and neoliberalism. The neoliberal state, liberal state is not a player in economy. It follows the idea of free trade, free market, laissez-faire. When it comes to neoliberalism, state has a role to play. State market takes state also with it, but state's role is very precise. State is the facilitator, state is the promoter, state has to support and create an atmosphere for the smooth functioning of international capital. And this is what exactly happened in India since 1991. The Indian state had stepped back from the historic role that it had played in economy and society. The social role of state has been completely changed. The role of state in economy is changed. It doesn't mean state is completely out from the scene. No, state is very much there, but state works for the interest of market. This is the new, social contract that neoliberal states had successfully brought into its economic and social role since 1991. When we see the case of India, it's very clear. We know we were all students, or we were just starting our university life during that time, early 1990s. And we have seen the way different social groups oppose this move of Indian state, particularly the left. Now what happens since 1970s, a type of indirect private government. It's not my term. The term is used by Achille Mbembe, the famous post-colonial thinker. Indirect private government. The government is private. It works for the private institutions. Institutions of state work for the interest of private market. A type of indirect private government, indirect private rule has been brought under neoliberal order. So this is what exactly happened ever since the introduction of neoliberal policies, which made the transformation of Indian state from a socialist state or a semi-socialist state or a semi-capitalist state to a full-fledged neoliberal state. As we all know, till 1980s, state had played a major role in the economy and the politics of the country. But 1991 onwards, what we see a reverse process in many sectors, many areas of economy and politics. State withdrawn, and that space has been occupied by market forces, particularly international finance capital has taken over the many functions that a state. And what state did, state has also reorganized itself, restructured its institution, or created new institutions, or removed certain type of institutions. The best example is planning commission. Certain type of institutions have been removed. Certain type of institutions, their role is redefined. certain type of institutions are restructured, and some new institutions are also created for facilitating the interests of global capital. This is what exactly happened. Now it has certain political impacts also. Right-wing conservatism is, some way become a favorite political ideology of the ruling elite class in neoliberal states. Stuart Hall talks about, a type of authoritarian populism, and we live in a state where authoritarian populism has become the most influential political action. How do authoritarian populism works? It doesn't change the democratic institutions. Rather, that is there in fascism, The fascist forces, they attack the democratic institution, they remove the democratic institution, they replace those institutions with some kind of authoritarian institutions. Whereas, authoritarian populism, what Stuart Hall says, they don't remove the democratic institutions, but what they do, they make the democratic institutions work according to the interest of capital. So it's not getting replaced. Rather, the way it functions. And if you see the contemporary Indian situation, you know that. And how do they do it? One way, they are successful in war of possession. They have created some kind of dominant discourses or narratives which favor neoliberal capitalist interest. As I said, that would become a common sense knowledge or hegemonic knowledge. And this is what exactly happened in Indian state. And what the outcome is, the opposition against neoliberal forces would become very weak. They have systematically undermined the power of opposition through this process. And also, they have taken over the democratic institution, like the way parliament functions. If you closely observe, the parliament is the most important democratic institution in our country, where we think cutthroat deliberations are supposed to be done. And if you see the last 5 years or last 10 years, hardly any deliberation happens when there is a lawmaking. So this is something. And it's not just at the center level. You see it at the regional level also, where, the neoliberal regime, neoliberal rationality dominates. They systematically undermine the democratic institutions and processes. But they don't kill those institutions. And where does legitimacy come in neoliberal institutions? Legitimacy doesn't come from people actually. Legitimacy comes from capital. Market is the legitimizing force. It is not people who are the legitimizing force. Practically this happens. If you take if you see the developments in India since 1999 particularly, because though it's the neoliberal transformation of Indian state started in 1991, the first decade was, a decade of uncertainties. With the NDA in power in 1999, you see some kind of formalization of or institutionalization of neoliberal practices in India. The government which came to power in 2004 simply continued that, we know that. Again 2004 and 9. And the 2009, what happened that the government lost the legitimacy because of the opposition from the capitalist class. This is what actually happened. And they have brought a new regime which was more aggressive in its, loyalty to neoliberal policies. 2014 onwards, we see this. With regard to this, there is a very famous observation made by Melinda Cooper. What she says, the neoliberal social conservatism doesn't emerge from the ruins of neoliberal capitalism. It's actually used the possibilities that have been created by neoliberal capitalism. The authoritarian tendencies that you see in Indian state today is actually derived from the neoliberal transformation of state. Another important point that I would like to add here is, how do neoliberalism redefined certain type of relations, for example, state-market relations, state-society relations. Market has become the key player. Now, market is over state. If you see the statecraft today, it's all for market. The first priority is market. When I use the term market, you must understand it in the larger context, which includes capital, both national capital and transnational capital. The institutions which promote market ideology or a type of market fundamentalism, let us say. So market is at the center of your governance. State machinery, state institutions, by and large, work for the interest of market, facilitate market. So the state-market relations have been, now reversed. State was at this superior, but market has become superior now. This is one. Now, state-society relations is also redefined. With regard to rights, we have studied, we discuss rights. In the neoliberal era, rights of market and rights of capital is above the right of people. If you closely observe, you see this. State is the guarantor today. State is the guarantor of the rights of market and capital. State is not the guarantor of your rights and my rights. It prefers market over individual rights. It prefers market over human rights. The rights of market, the rights of capital is protected by state. As a facilitator, so there is a clear change in the role of state. State used to be the regulator. And why did state do this regulation? In order to ensure the constitutionally guaranteed rights of people. Now it's no more. If you do a detailed analysis of the happenings in our state today, it will provide it. The post-colonial Indian state actually had established over a type of social contract between the people of this country and the ruling class of this country. That contract is now broken. Today, the contract that rule, that govern, that guide the state is the contract between market and state. It is not people and state. How does it reflect in our state policies? I'll give some examples and I'll stop this deliberation. See, when we go for an empirical analysis of this process, once you see the budget allocation, what happens in the budgets? You take the budgets of union government for last 10 years or say 15 years, despite the nature of regime. Nature of regime doesn't matter because you are governed by neoliberal rationality. When you are governed by neoliberal rationality, it doesn't matter whether it is left or right, BJP or Congress, doesn't matter. Because the ruling ideology is neoliberal rationality. You are governed by that. So you see the character of budget. I'll just, there are a number of cases one can look into, but let's take this time. There is a 7% increase in the total budget allocation, union government. But what you see in that, the allocation for social sector is decreased. It used to be 20 to 21%. It has come down to 17% allocation for social sector. And as a share of GDP, come down from 3.3% to 2.8%. I am talking about the entire social sector allocation, which includes education, health, or social support mechanism, subsidies, extra. Now this is what happens in neoliberal state, where the focus of the state is to promote market forces. So incentives are given to market forces. Social sector allocation, education sector, you see a gradual decrease in allocation in education sector. Absolute numbers you may see high, but a realistic analysis, when we do, the percentage of either the percentage of GDP or the percentage of total budget allocation. So this is what is exactly happening. This is one instance where I can argue for the influence of neoliberal rationality in the state policies. The second, you take another case where we have experience of states which stands for the interest of say people. I don't know whether you must be remembering, there was a agriculture loan waiver scheme brought by UPA government. And the total amount which was, write-off, the amount which gave relaxation to farmers, lakhs of farmers in this country was 76,000 crore, 76,700 crore rupees. It's a big amount, no doubt. Lakhs of farmers in this country benefited by this move. But when I give you another estimate, you will realize what happens in this country. 33 billionaires got 37,600 crore loan waiver. And this is given by SBI. So when lakhs of farmers in this country got 76,700 crore, just 33 billionaires got, these are the estimates, official estimates given by Government of India. 37,700 And recently, you must have noticed that there was a debate. The last 5 years, 10.6 lakh crores, loan waiver by government of India, in which 52.3% has gone to billionaires. So now you see how do state, facilitate, promote the interest of the capitalist groups in this country, big business industrial groups. And these amounts are total benefit that they got in last 5 years is 5 lakh crore. So this is another scenario. Whereas, if you see the budgets of last 10 years, 15 years, there is a gradual decrease in the social sector spending of government. Except there is an exception, that was during the COVID time. We all know there was an exceptional situation where state has increased social sector spending because of the necessity of that situation. Otherwise, you see the way gradually decreases. So this is another scenario. The third scenario, probably the impact of this. What happens in this country? Thomas Piketty and Lancel, they have done a very beautiful study a few years back. It is called British Raj to Billionaire Raj. Some of you must have heard of that. Some of you must have read that. And his conclusion, based on empirical evidences and data and scientific studies, inequality in this country, it was less during the colonial period compared to neoliberal period. This is the finding, globally accepted. It is more now than the British period. Now, another estimate says just 10% of the top, richest in this country on 77% of the wealth in this country. 10%. And 50% who come at the lower half, they have just 1%. These figures indicates something. It is the result of what I mentioned earlier, redefine the relation between state and market. Redefine the relation between state and society. The state works for a capitalist neoliberal class, and they get definitely the benefit. And in India, in another data, this may be interesting for you. In 1991, there was only 1 billionaire in this country. The number increased to 9 in the year 2000. Okay? In 2017, the number has gone to 100 billionaires. 1 in 1991, 9 in 2000, 101 in 2017, and 273 in 2024. And these billionaires in India own 7% of the global wealth. And India has got the third largest number of billionaires in the world today. And believe me, it is the Indian state that the neoliberal Indian state that facilitated, promoted, created an atmosphere for the growth of this super rich class in India. They have taken over the wealth of the country, they have taken over the state machineries of the country. They are the state now. There is no difference. They are the state. That is why we call it neoliberal state. They are the state. So this is the scenario that we have today with us. Now, there is a crucial question remains here. Why there is no opposition, or why the opposition is not successful? There are different reasons for that. One major reason, the mainstream political parties, the major political parties, which includes national parties as well as regional parties, have already embraced neoliberal ideas. They have changed their political ideology and political program accordingly. And in order to overcome the opposition from people, what they have done, they have systematically created certain narratives where the economic impact of neoliberalism has been covered by other type of narratives. This is the place where, the neoliberal conservatism become very important. You successfully, taken the debates and discourses out from the real issue. One example I'll give you. We all have heard of Anna Hazare movement, India against corruption. So what exactly the problem? The problem lies in neoliberal policies introduced by the state. But your resistance is focusing towards a particular political party or certain individuals. Instead of opposing the real cause, you have, definitely the Congress collapsed, BJP came to power. They have also continued, or more aggressively, with the same type of policies. This is one interesting example that we can see from our experience. What happens? What happened to our peasant movements, workers' movements? These movements had the potential to determine the politics, decide the directions of our politics once upon a time. But what is the status of workers' movement and peasant movements in India? We see the peasants struggle in this country for last few years. It didn't affect the ruling class at all. So this is what is happening. Now, what happened, there is neoliberalism, it's not, neoliberalism use different tactics. Neoliberals use different tactics. Political tactics and economic tactics. And at times they use religion, culture, ethnicity, nationalism, everything. We know that. We have been seeing this. And this is what is happening actually. A counter-hegemonic force is not emerged, or it's very, very, very weak. We know the status of left. Left was the only political force that seriously and sincerely debated this issue. Where does the problem lies? But gradually, what you see, we now started talking about concrete situations in which we have to, change policies. And how does these concrete situations emerge? Who create this concrete situation? What are the forces that actually shape these concrete situations? It is the neoliberal forces. Neoliberal forces shape this concrete situation, and if you adopt to that situation, there comes the crisis. So this is, by different ways, the opposition is completely discredited. And that is what happens in this country. And another important way of functioning, the neoliberal governmentality it is called. The state gradually, create a discourse where it kicks the ball to people's court. State play a role as the facilitator of market. It encourages, supports the institutions of market. Whereas, when it comes to the social question, state takes a step back. It kicks the ball to the people's court. The neoliberal rationality worked there. Why are you poor? It is because of your inability, your laziness, your inefficiency. This is the way the discourse changes. Now, let me finish with this point. What I'm trying to see, that there is a historic block emerged, if you go with the Gramscian understanding. A state-society complex where the post-colonial Indian state has joined with the neoliberal capitalist group and class, which includes the national as well as international. And they have created a historic bloc, and their ideological hegemony has been established through various discourses, which all includes war of position also. I am not neglecting that. That is the reason why a type of consensus is emerged, or a consent. You, me, Professor Vincent, we all think neoliberal order is natural, normal, and the best. This is the way a type of, hegemonic knowledge is produced. The social forces which actually reshaped the politics and economics of our country, they have taken over real power in their hands. They have manipulated all type of institutions, and we know how the media in this country have been manipulated, who become the vanguards of neoliberal ideology in this country today. And legal system, through various legislations, Parliament is also involved in that. And altogether, you have successfully institutionalized a neoliberal state. That is the reason why, as Professor Vincent has already mentioned, it's not evolving state, it is already evolved. The chances of emergence of counter-hegemonic forces, possibly, is almost dismal at this point of time. The conservative, right-wing conservative forces join with the neoliberal forces, successfully established their control over the body politic of the state. This is my observation and this is my argument. I would like to stop here. Once again, thank you, Professor Vincent, Dr. Manoj, and all other faculty colleagues, students, everyone who is part of this institution, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
നിയോലിബറലിസം ഒരു ന്യൂ നോർമൽ ആയിട്ട് മാറിയിരിക്കുന്നു എന്നതൊരു വസ്തുതയാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് വളരെ സ്വാഭാവികമായിട്ടുള്ള പ്രതിഷേധം അതിനെതിരെ ഉയർന്നു വരാത്തതിൻ്റെ കാര്യം അതാണ്. ഇറ്റ് ബിക്കം എ ന്യൂ നോർമൽ. അപ്പോൾ നിയോ കൊളോണിയൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഫോർമേഷൻ എങ്ങനെയാണ് നമ്മളുടെ ചിന്താധാരകളെയും രാഷ്ട്രീയ സാമൂഹ്യ ചിന്തകളെയും സ്വാധീനിച്ചത്, അത് വളരെ സ്വാഭാവികമായും നോർമലായും മാറുകയും അത് കോമൺ സെൻസായി മാറുകയും ചെയ്തതുകൊണ്ടാണ് വളരെ സംഘടിതമായ പ്രതിഷേധങ്ങൾ വളർന്നു വരാത്തത് എന്ന് സെബാസ്റ്റ്യൻ മാഷ് സൂചിപ്പിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി. ഇനി നമുക്ക് ഇത് സംബന്ധിച്ചുള്ളൊരു ഡിസ്കഷൻ ആവാം. നമുക്ക് വളരെ സമയം കുറവാണ്. 5:30 ഈ സെഷൻ വൈൻഡ് ചെയ്യേണ്ടതാണ്. നമുക്കൊരു 5 മിനിറ്റ്സ് ഇൻറ്ററാക്ഷന് വേണ്ടി മാറ്റിവെക്കാം. അപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഭാഗത്തു നിന്നുള്ള പ്രതികരണങ്ങളും അത് ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ, നിങ്ങളുടെ പൊസിഷൻ എന്നിവ ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നു.
സാർ, ഞാൻ മലയാളത്തിൽ ചോദിക്കുകയാണ്. ഈ നവ ലിബറൽ കാലഘട്ടത്തിൽ 2 കീ പ്ലേയേഴ്സായിട്ട് വരുന്ന ആളുകളാണ് അമേരിക്ക, അതേപോലെ ചൈന. അതിലൊന്നെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞത് സാർ പറഞ്ഞൊരു റെഗുലേറ്ററായിട്ട് അമേരിക്കയിലുള്ള ഗവൺമെൻറ് കാര്യങ്ങൾ നീക്കുമ്പോൾ ചൈനയിൽ അത് ഒരു സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഓൺഡ് എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിലാണ് പോകുന്നത്. സാർ പിന്നെ അടുത്തായിട്ട് പറഞ്ഞു ലെഫ്റ്റ് വിങ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഈ ലെഫ്റ്റ് റെജീംസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നതാണ് മാത്രമാണ് ഇതിന് ഡിബേറ്റ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എതിരായിട്ടുള്ളൊരു ശബ്ദമായിട്ട് വരുന്നത്. ഒരു സോഷ്യലിസ്റ്റ് മൂവ്മെൻറ്റിലൂടെ കടന്നു വന്നിട്ടുള്ള ഈ ഒരു ചൈനീസ് റെജീം എങ്ങനെ ഈ ഒരു ലിബറൽ ഈ ഒരു സറൗണ്ടിങ്സിൽ എങ്ങനെ നിൽക്കുന്നു, അതിൽ നിന്ന് ഇന്ത്യക്ക് എന്തെല്ലാം മനസ്സിലാക്കാം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എന്തെല്ലാം മാറ്റങ്ങൾ കൈക്കൊള്ളാന്നുള്ളതാണ് ചോദിച്ചത്.
ചൈനയുടെ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് നമുക്ക് ഓഫ് കോഴ്സ് വി ഹാവ് സർട്ടൻ തിങ്സ് ടു ലേൺ ഫ്രം ദി എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ഓഫ് ചൈന. അവിടെ ഒരു സംഭവം ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് മാർക്കറ്റ് റിലേഷൻ, that is what is redefined in Indian case. സ്റ്റേറ്റും ക്യാപിറ്റലുമായിട്ടുള്ള റിലേഷനിൽ ക്യാപിറ്റലിൻ്റെ മേലെ ഡോമിനൻസ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു പോസ്റ്റ് കൊളോണിയൽ ഇന്ത്യൻ സ്റ്റേറ്റിന് ഇൻ ഇറ്റ്സ് ഇനീഷ്യൽ ഡെക്കേഡ്സ്. അത് 1991 മുതൽ മാറുന്നു എന്നുള്ളതല്ലാണ് നമ്മളുടെ ചിത്രം മാറുന്നത്. ശരിക്കും ഒരു നിയോ ലിബറൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റിലേക്കുള്ള ട്രാൻസ്ഫോർമേഷൻ. ഈ സ്റ്റേറ്റും മാർക്കറ്റുമായിട്ടുള്ള റിലേഷൻഷിപ്പിൽ ചൈന ഒരു റെഗുലേറ്റർ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് എന്നുള്ള റോള് വളരെ കൃത്യമായി വഹിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. ചൈന എന്താണ് ചെയ്തതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഇറ്റ് വാസ് നോട്ട് അഗൻസ്റ്റ് ക്യാപിറ്റൽ. ആക്ച്വലി ക്യാപിറ്റലിനെതിരായിട്ടല്ല ചൈന നിന്നത്. ചൈന ഹാസ് ടേക്കൺ ഓൾ പോസിബിലിറ്റീസ് ടു യൂസ് ഗ്ലോബൽ ക്യാപിറ്റൽ. അതിന് പറ്റിയ ഒരു അറ്റ്മോസ്ഫിയർ അവിടെ ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് കൊടുത്തു. ചൈന ഹാസ് ഓൾസോ done certain internal reforms in terms of labor reforms, we know, particularly even though it was specifically demarcated to special economic zones. അതിന് പറ്റുന്ന ഗ്ലോബൽ മാർക്കറ്റിൻ്റെയും ക്യാപിറ്റലിൻ്റെ ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റിന് പറ്റുന്ന രീതിയിലുള്ള ചില പോളിസീസ് ചൈന ഇൻട്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്തിരുന്നു. ബട്ട് വാട്ട് ഈസ് ഡൺ ഇൻ ചൈന, വാട്ട് ഹാപ്പൻഡ് ഇൻ ചൈന, യു നോ, Chinese government has played a crucial role in ensuring the redistribution of resources. Now what happens in India, you know, a type of concentration of resources. See, China is the second largest country in terms of number of billionaires. It's also a fact. But Chinese government, what Chinese government has done, it has kept a control over capital. Being facilitator of capital, it's fine. Yeah, China remained as a facilitator of capital, but at the same time, it could effectively brought some control over capital. അതുകൊണ്ട് ചൈന ഒരു നിയോലിബറൽ ട്രാൻസ്ഫോർമേഷൻ ഉണ്ടായില്ല ചൈനയിൽ. മാർക്കറ്റ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ് റിലേഷൻസിനെ റീഡിഫൈൻ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടുള്ള. ആൻഡ് മോർ ഓവർ ഈ ചൈനയിൽ സംഭവിച്ചത്, ഐ ഹാവ് സീൻ ദാറ്റ് if you go to the interior of China, Chinese government has effectively reached out to the last person also. The wealth that the state has created over the period through the capitalist production system. ക്യാപിറ്റലിസ്റ്റ് പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ സിസ്റ്റം തന്നെയാണ് ചൈനയിലും നിലനിൽക്കുന്നത്. പക്ഷേ ചൈനീസ് ഗവൺമെൻറ്റിന് ആ ഒരു കാര്യം ചെയ്യാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞു എന്നുള്ളതാണ് അവരുടെ സക്സസ്. ഐ എം നോട്ട് സെയിങ് ദാറ്റ് the states can now turn their face against global capital. It is a reality. No state, no party can escape from that. But what actually state can do is, instead of being the advocates of global capital and capitalism, the state can play a proactive role in terms of ensuring its social responsibilities. You getting my point? See, ഇവിടെയാണ് ഇന്ത്യൻ സ്റ്റേറ്റിന് എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു പാഠം പഠിക്കാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ what I feel, നമ്മുടെ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഒരു റീഡിസ്ട്രിബ്യൂഷൻ്റെ റോള് സ്റ്റേറ്റിന് പ്ലേ ചെയ്യാനുണ്ട്. Particularly a country like India where the different types of structural inequalities exist. Different types of structural inequalities. So അവിടെ സ്റ്റേറ്റിന് മാത്രമേ എഫക്റ്റീവായിട്ട് എന്തെങ്കിലും ചെയ്യാൻ കഴിയുള്ളൂ. And this is what Ambedkar said. This is what the post-colonial Indian state wanted to do. And this is the base of our constitution. This is what is the soul of our constitution. Now in neoliberal regime, what happened, you have completely deviated from all this, and you, at the end of the day, you become the promoter and advocate of global capital. This is the place where issue comes. It's not that you outrightly reject global capitalism, but you should have the ability to effectively monitor and make use of this capital for the overall development of your country. But now your focus is more on, increase the number of billionaires. Last 1 year, there's 73 more billionaires are added to. This is the way socialist state. What exactly socialist state wanted to do? It has to bring some kind of distributional equality. It has to address that question. Now what happens is just reverse. State hardly play any role in that.
അപ്പോൾ സമയത്തിൻ്റെ കുറവുണ്ട്, നമുക്ക് ഈ സെഷൻ ഇവിടെ വൈൻഡപ്പ് ചെയ്യാം. വളരെ നല്ല ഒരു ബ്രെയിൻ സ്റ്റോമിംഗ് സെഷൻ തന്നെയായിരുന്നു. ഇന്ത്യയെക്കുറിച്ച്, ഇന്ത്യയുടെ സ്റ്റേറ്റിൻ്റെ തുടക്കം, ദ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഓഫ് ഇന്ത്യ ഈസ് ഫോർ ദ പീപ്പിൾ ബട്ട് നോട്ട് അഗൻസ്റ്റ് global capital or national capital. That was the position taken by in the initial stages of modern state formation after independence. But now the state is for capital, isn't it? The state is for international capital or global capital, not against the common people. In that way, we redefined the very structural pattern of the state itself. സെബാസ്റ്റ്യൻ മാഷ് അത് വളരെ സുവ്യക്തമായിട്ട് നമ്മളോട് സൂചിപ്പിച്ചു. അത് സംബന്ധിച്ചുള്ള സംവാദങ്ങളിൽ ചൈനീസ് മോഡൽ വളരെ പ്രധാനമായിട്ട് വരുന്നു. ചൈനയെക്കുറിച്ച് പറയുന്നത് ഈ ഗ്ലോബലൈസേഷൻ്റെ സദ്ഫലങ്ങൾ ഒരു 80% ചൈന എത്തിച്ചു എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. സാധാരണക്കാരിൽ എല്ലാ റൂറൽ ഏരിയയിലൊക്കെ അവരെത്തിച്ചു. ഇന്ത്യയിലാണെങ്കിൽ അത് 20% മാത്രമേ എത്തിയിട്ടുള്ളൂ. ഇന്ത്യയിൽ 80% പുറത്താണെങ്കിൽ ചൈനയിൽ ഒരു 20% താഴെ മാത്രമാണ് പുറത്തുള്ളത്. രണ്ടും ഏറെക്കുറെ ഒരേ പോപ്പുലേഷനുമാണ്. അതാണ് ചൈനീസ് മോഡലിൻ്റെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത. അത് ആ രൂപത്തിലൊരു റീഡിസ്ട്രിബ്യൂഷൻ നടത്താനുള്ള സ്റ്റേറ്റിൻ്റെ ഘടന അവിടെയുള്ളത് കമ്മ്യൂണിസ്റ്റ് പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ സ്ട്രക്ചർ ഉള്ളതുകൊണ്ടാണ്. ഏതായാലും ഇതിൽ പങ്കെടുത്ത എല്ലാവർക്കും, ചർച്ചയിൽ പങ്കെടുത്തവർക്കും നന്ദി രേഖപ്പെടുത്തിക്കൊണ്ട് ഈ സെഷൻ അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ സെബാസ്റ്റ്യൻ മാഷിൻ്റെ ഒരു ചെറിയ റെസ്പോൺസോടുകൂടി നമുക്ക്
എംപിരിക്കൽ എവിഡൻസ് ചൈനയുടെ കേസിൽ നമുക്ക് പറയാൻ പറ്റുന്നത് പോവർട്ടി ഇറാഡിക്കേഷൻ്റെ കാര്യത്തിലാണ്. ചൈന ഇറ്റ്സ് അൺബിലീവബിൾ success in terms of it's the state's role in poverty eradication in China, whereas we know what happens in India. Poverty is getting eradicated in India in papers, not at ground level, whereas China has successfully the most successful experiment and experience. This is because of the way China has handled the possibilities that capitalist production system has given. So this is something which 70s ഇന്ത്യയെക്കാളും പിന്നിലായിരുന്നു ചൈന in terms of poverty. But when it comes to 2020, it's almost China is no more a poor country. There is hardly any poverty exists in China, which is better than the highly developed capitalist states in terms of that.